Well guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to the 100-day project, day 97. It's the final weekend, and so I thought, just to push things out the door, welcome back to another Foto Fridays. Now this is going to be slightly different. It is going to be me just sitting here talking. Oh, and by the way, this is our park up for the night. None too shabby. So it is going to be me just talking a little bit, but I actually am going to overlay some video footage that I took at the time when I was out making or trying to make the images. This footage is actually from a couple of weeks ago, whenever we stayed at the Ionian Blue Taverna. They offered free park-ups. We went in for a meal. There was no pressure to have a meal, but actually it was right on a beautiful beach, and it had a couple of big storms moving through. And anyone who is familiar with landscape photography knows that some of the best light can be just before, or quite often just after, a storm has moved through. So once that storm had kind of passed by over the campsite, I wandered down to the beachfront and seen whether we could capture anything. So time to get things set up with the old Fujifilm GFX 50R. And the island out in the distance there that the light is kind of over is Kefalonia, which actually we hope to visit in a couple of weeks' time. So as I set the camera up, I was quite hopeful, and I'll tell you why. So what we have going on here is a little gap on the horizon, which is hopefully where the sun is going to break through. But then right above us we have some really interesting and atmospheric clouds. Not to mention, of course, lovely interest in the distance with those islands, a little bit of weather still moving through, and then of course depending on where you sort of position your camera, you can even get some lovely movement in those waves. So things at this point, I was starting to get a little bit excited, as us landscape photographers do. And yeah, a far cry from shooting on the north coast of Ireland. Crocs with every landscape photography shoot. Fantastic. So as you can see, some really nice light on the horizon, but what I'm really interested in is those clouds. That's really what's going to make this particular image if it comes off. But of course, with the gap, there's always a chance that it's not going to happen. The gap at this point looked promising, but there's no guarantees, which actually makes landscape photography, the chase of landscape photography, so much more enjoyable. I think if it was simply just a case of turning up at a location, setting up your camera, taking an image, and it turning out really well, I'm not sure I'd be as interested in that. For me, it's the chase, it's the anticipation, and more often than not, the disappointment as well. But you know what? I can actually remember how I was feeling at this particular point in time. I didn't really mind if the light happened or not. It was just such a privilege to be standing here. And I probably was in this one location for at least an hour as we sort of watched the light and the clouds and the situation developed. An absolute privilege. So one of the things that I hadn't really anticipated, and this is, you know, my bad, my mistake, because the weather system was kind of moving away from me, what that also meant that the clouds were moving away from the particular composition, or the compositions that I was thinking at, both from a horizontal perspective and also from a vertical perspective. And that meant that we were going to be left with quite a bit of gap at the top of the frame. That wouldn't be ideal, so what I was having to do was almost follow the clouds as they moved in and shrink my kind of composition, or the aspect ratio, up more and more. Initially from a 4:3, then maybe into a 16:9, and then finally in by a 3:1. So as those clouds move further away, it did make the composition a little bit less easy to attain. And of course, the last thing you want to see whenever you're out on a shoot is memory full. Now actually this isn't as bad as it seems. The GFX has actually got 2 memory slots, and what I do is I shoot images to both of the cards, and I keep one of the cards as a complete backup, and then only delete the images from that there many months afterwards. And that's what's happened here. So it was just a very quick action for me to go onto the memory card 1 and delete about 20 or 30 images. Don't worry, they were all backed up on my laptop and indeed in the cloud as well. But yeah, memory full. At least I actually remembered to bring the memory cards with me this time. I have been known to get to a shoot, turn on the camera, and the camera to go, "You idiot." So we've now got about 20 minutes until sunset, and at this point I'm starting to realize that we might just be fighting a losing battle. A combination of the fact of the clouds moving away and unbalancing the composition, or at the very least making the top part of the frame very sort of bland and uninteresting. And at the same time, because the weather system is moving further away from me, what that's actually doing is it's shrinking the gap that I was hoping the sun was going to be moving into. At this point, with about 20 minutes to go, with the gap that we originally had on the horizon combined with the clouds above, I would have expected some of the clouds above me to have started taking on some lovely sort of purples and red light, and that just wasn't happening. So what I was thinking was happening was that weather system that was moving further away from me, it was also coming at the same sort of in the same direction as the sun was setting, which was sort of snuffing things out. So with about 20 minutes to go, I started to realise that this probably was going to be a lost cause. So now with about 9 minutes left, and you can see here, yeah, that gap is really starting to shrink and shrivel up, and we're just getting no light whatsoever. So 20 minutes to go, I was losing hope. At this point, I'd pretty much lost hope. Not only that, but the composition that I had in mind had really lost a lot of its appeal because of the blankness and the blandness in the upper part of the frame. But it was still nice to just wait about and watch the sun slide below the horizon. Now, as you can see here, I use an app called Photo Pills, and that was actually showing me where the sun was going to be appearing. And what was interesting was it was predicting that it was going to appear in the last little gap that was available on the horizon. So maybe with a couple of minutes left, things were going to kind of just open up. Now, if that would have happened, I think the light would have lasted for seconds, maybe a minute or so. But I still wasn't totally convinced that it was going to happen anyway. As you can see here, here's that gap. Just, it'd been so nice if that sun had just poked out, because at this point I was now shooting a very tight horizontal frame, so mostly focusing on the distant islands, and we could have got something there if the sun had broken through. But I think what was happening was, unseen to my eye, there was actually a little bit more cloud in behind this thicker bank of cloud that was really snuffing things out. And as you can see here, this is the sun making an appearance, but because there's so many layers of cloud in front of it, we just weren't getting any light. So it was a bit of a busted job from an image perspective. So it was then just time to pack up the bag, one last look down the beach, and call it quits for the night. But you know what? Even without an image, what a soul enriching and a happiness inducing hour and a half that I spent standing on that beach. And I did get a couple of images that I was quite happy with, just not the one that I think would have, if that sun had broken through with the clouds, I think it would have been pretty nice indeed. But there were still a couple of images that I'll show at the end of this vlog that I was reasonably pleased with. But as I've said before, the final image for me is almost the least important part of the whole photographic process, at least from my perspective. The chase, the anticipation, the conundrum as you try to work out composition, the highs and the lows, will it, won't it? Of course, making an image in the field and that sort of endorphin, that excitement as you're making the image. Yes, it can be nice to have a final image to show for it, but that for me is 10% of the whole photographic process, at least from my perspective. And certainly even lower than that is then sharing that image. I was listening, or I was reading someone's comment on their Facebook page a couple of weeks ago, and they had said that they had put down the camera for a number of months because the amount of engagement that they were getting on Facebook had fallen through the floor. And that's, from my opinion, the wrong way to be looking at this. We should be making images, making our art for ourselves and ourselves alone. If it engages with other people, then so be it. But if we're making images to make other people happy, it's a fool's game. Go out with a camera with the anticipation, go out even on a blue sky day, but with that anticipation something might happen. And if you don't end up getting an image, don't beat yourself up about it, but actually be thankful that you had the opportunity and the privilege to actually be out in the field. Well, there you go, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this little Foto Fridays, just talking you through a bit of a photo shoot that I had a couple of weeks ago. I'll go ahead now and share some of the images from that particular evening, and don't worry, I'm not going to then artificially impose some wonderful sky and pass that off as what happened. The final image that I really wanted to make didn't work out, but as I've said, that's completely okay as I get attacked by a giant flying what's it thingy. We're gonna sit and enjoy. I say we because if I just turn you around, someone's been in for her second dip of the day. She's not even paying attention.
Sorry, I'm engrossed in my book.
I'm going to go back into the van, get this video edited. This is pretty much real time. Get this video uploaded for you guys to hopefully enjoy this evening. Well guys, once again, thanks a lot for following along, and from the 100-day project, day 97, we shall catch up tomorrow.